Alrighty, just recording this to preface a couple of matches I just recorded with this deck, to give a little bit of background on it. I wrote an article about it, which I posted to the Planet's blog. I'll provide a link for it in the description for this. However, just wanted to talk about a little bit about the evolution of this deck. This is my blue-black aggro control deck. It started as Shouta Yasuka's blue-black control deck that he played at Pro Tour Theros, but since then it has taken a much more aggro control build, trying to be more proactive, since the majority of the decks in this format are devotion decks, which usually tend to just try to vomit things into play, do something really powerful, and very often against very powerful decks you want to just try to win the game instead of drawing the game out. So that's why we play cards like Master of Waves and Pack Rat to just have powerful ways to end the game. Aetherling is also a very powerful way to end the game. Master Waves pretty much stabilizes the board as soon as he comes down in a lot of cases. Pack Rat, not so much, but can still win the game very quickly. Besides the meat and potatoes of the deck, which would be, we have Jace, Master Waves, Night Veil Spectre here. These are all the 4-ofs in the deck. Night Veil Spectre, I'm pretty sure this is the best Night Veil Spectre deck in the format, since against both of the other Night Veil Spectre decks, they get to only play half of the cards that they flip over with their Spectre, and we get to play all of the cards that we flip over with our Spectre. So Spectre blocks against all the other decks besides the Devotion decks. He very often forces a Wrath by himself out of the Revelation decks. All around good card, good body, he blocks against the rest of the decks. Master Waves, bad against spot removal, but very good against everything else. Our best card against the creature matchups, like red. He's very good against the white decks. And Jace is really the backbone of the deck, or one of the many pieces of the backbone of the deck. Adds devotion, controls the board, lets us start drawing a bunch of cards. He is an all-around nice guy. Besides those guys, we already talked a little about Pack Rat. Pack Rat is slower at stabilizing the game than Master Waves, but is more resilient to spot removal. So we have only 2 in the main deck. We can bring in more in the board against decks where Master Waves is not very good against, but I think 2 is the right number in the main deck. Omen Speaker is our best friend against the red and white aggro decks. Just having 3 in the butt, adding devotion for Master Waves, digging for the proper lands that we need. All around good card, Omen Speaker. Speaking of digging for lands, this deck's mana base, despite being 2 colors, is pretty damn awkward. Also, we're only playing 3 Mutavaults for that reason, the mana base being really awkward. Our 3-drops are very, very mana intensive. You know, playing black, black, blue, blue, and then triple colored mana means that a single Mutavault can often throw off the your ability to curve out. Drawing double Mutavault, it makes for some really awkward hands where we sometimes just can't cast any of our 3-drops. So the mana in this deck is a little bit shaky, but sticking to 2 colors, I think it's manageable, especially with the Scry lands and Omen Speaker there to help us out a little bit. Thoughtseize goes without saying. This is an amazing card, especially for an aggro control deck. Lets us know what we need to play around, if we need to start pressuring them or not. Only reason there's not 4 is because it's a pretty dead draw later in the game, and yeah, we don't want to be losing too much life since we don't play Grey Merchant like the mono black decks do. Ratchet Bomb is one of my favorite cards in this format, alongside Jace. I was playing in my blue-white control deck, but it's a little more awkward in that deck since you have your own detention spheres. This deck has no such problem, and then Ratchet Bomb gives us insurance against things like Mistcutter, Hydra, Pack Rat, Underworld Connections, and it forces the Devotion decks to think twice about dumping their entire hand into play. So Ratchet Bomb is an all-around awesome card. Even against the control decks, it's good. You set it on 3, and it forces them to play their Detention Spheres and Jaces very differently. We also have a bunch of spot removal. Hero's Downfall is very good. Goes without saying that we want it in our deck for its it just kills things straight up. Not playing 4 because we want to keep some room in our curve for Dissolve. And of course we're not cutting down on Nightveil Spectre. So we've been playing 3 Heroes Downfall, but we make up for it with a very flexible Far and Away. Both of these are very good against Mono Black. Anything with Pack Rat. The 4-drops in this deck are so powerful that they kind of give us a little bit of an edge, and then casting a Far and Away to follow it up will usually just put us way far ahead. So Far and Away is very good. Sometimes you end up only casting half of it, which is fine, like bouncing an Advent Orm token or a Pack Rat token. I think it came up a couple times today in the videos I recorded. And we have a 1-1-1 split on the rest of our spot removal. Devour Flesh is arguably the best removal spell in the format before Bile Bite coming out. But since the deck does try to end the game rather quickly sometimes, you know, letting them gain 6 life off of their Desecration Demon, or even 3 life off of a Nightveil Spectre is not ideal all the time. I do like having 1 since it does, you know, it's always going to hit something, but I like the ability to snipe cards down as well, and the away part of Far and Away kind of helps us with the non-targeted removal that Devour Flesh usually carries the full weight of that in the mono black decks. Dimir Charm, rather underwhelming in some matchups like the mid-range decks, but it hits Spectre, it hits Mutavault, it hits Master Waves, it hits Pack Rat early, so it's a good removal spell. Like the blue-white decks are playing Last Breath in their main deck, so Dimir Charm is not unreasonable. It also counters Thoughtseize, Mizium Mortars, Anger of the Gods, which doesn't come up very often, but when it does, it's very nice. I think I've used the 3rd ability on it once to dig for lands, but it was a pretty loose play even then. So it's really a 2-mode card, but it's a fine 2-mode card. Doomblade, very bad against mono black, but not dead because their Mutavaults are almost always relevant against us because we have Jace. In the Pack Rat War, killing one of their Mutavaults is very relevant. We fall into the draw-go game plan against them every now and then, so sometimes they try to get an edge in that with Mutavault, which Doomblade turns on against all of a sudden, so it's fine. That's the main... Oh, the counter spells. We've got a 2-2 split on Syncopate and Dissolve. Syncopate lets us answer Thassa's and Underworld Connections when we're on the draw, and Dissolve is just solid against everything else. I've been, like, it's more of a tap-out deck than a traditional, you know, the traditional blue-white lists, since we have 2 4-drops and a 3-drop that we want to tap out for pretty regularly. But I like having the insurance of counterspells. I could, if I was going to mess around with a slot in the main deck, it would probably be one of these, but I like having the 2-2 split right now. They're very necessary for battling the control decks, since if we're just a tap-out control deck against them, we can't really compete with, like, their Sphinx's Revelations and Elspeths. So these are a little necessary. Yes. So that's the main deck. I've been very happy with it so far. Moving on to the sideboard, we've got Aetherling. The second Aetherling comes in against Blood Baron decks, against Reaper of the Wild decks, and against Revelation decks. He's the best thing that we can do. Basically, like, the spot removal decks that Master Waves is bad against, we bring in the second Aetherling, except for Mono Black, because Mono Black Pack Rat is usually more relevant than Aetherling, and being on the Pack Rat plan cuts off the Aetherling plan, since we're usually discarding extra lands, which we need to have Aetherling be good. So against Mono Black, the Aetherling doesn't come in, but usually when our Master Waves come out against other matchups, the Aetherling is a nice extra way to win the game. Domestication is a sweet 2-for-1 against pretty much all of the Devotion decks. Stealing Night Veil Spectre or Pack Rat from Mono Black is very good. Hitting Master or Night Veil Spectre against Mono Blue, or Boros Reckoner, or any of their better 2-drops like Ash Zealot or Frostburn Word is very good against Mono Red. So Domestication is a sweet card. It's good enough that I've considered adding more to the sideboard, but bringing it in with our already powerhouse 4-drops is a little awkward on our curve sometimes. I've had a couple of games where I've just died with 3 mana and a bunch of good 4-drops in my hand, and I'd like to minimize that, so we only have 2 Domestications. The second Doomblade on the board is to give us a little extra percentage against the aggro matchups. As well as Far and Away also comes in against the aggro matchups, especially against Mono Blue. Being able to bounce our own Spectre or Master after they domesticate it is, it completely negates the advantage that they get from it, and if we're able to fuse it and bounce their our domesticated creature, then that's very good. So this is a very nice card. We'll bring it in against like Blood Baron decks as well. For Gainsay, we swap out our clunky and inefficient counterspells against Mono Blue for very efficient counterspells. They play enough power cards like Master, Spectre, Bident, Jace that we need to still have counterspells in our deck, but they play enough like little dudes that these counterspells are very clunky and inefficient against them. So we don't want more than 4 counterspells against them, but we want them to be very efficient counterspells, so these come in against Mono Blue. It's also extra padding against the Blue-White and Esper decks, although Esper has kind of fallen out of popularity lately. The Gainsays usually side into about between 6 to 8 counterspells against Blue-White, depending on the build. If they're heavy on Elspeth or they're bringing in Archangel, then we don't need as many Gainsays, but it's just a very efficient counterspell when we're fighting over stuff like other counterspells and Jaces and whatnot. So it's a good card to have 4 of. Thoughtseize also comes in against the Revelation decks, and not too much else. I can understand people wanting to bring it in against Mono Black because you know, having as many ways to interact with a turn 2 Pack Rat as possible is usually a good thing, but late in the game the discard isn't all that great, and I feel like we have enough ways, especially with Ratchet Bomb, to handle a turn 2 Pack Rat that I don't like bringing in the Thoughtseize, and we are bringing in Underworld Connections against the Mono Black deck as well, so I feel like the life is a relevant factor to consider. So I haven't been bringing in the 4 Thoughtseize against the Mono Black, but it comes in every time against the Revelation decks. It also, like, the green Devotion decks all side in Thoughtseize, since you need to snipe their Garrux or Xenagoses and stuff like that, and yeah. Underworld Connections, as I said, comes in against Mono Black. If we take the game long and they have an unanswered connections, then it can be very hard for us to win, even if we have like a Jace or a Night Veil Spectre going. If they have Underworld Connections, you know, it just makes their Garys that much better, so we need to do our best to like keep going card for card with them, making sure we have a counterspell for their Gary, or just removal to make sure their Garys are very low impact, and Underworld Connections helps a lot with that. Pack Rat comes in, as I said, in a lot of matchups where Master comes out, because Master is bad against spot removal, but Pack Rat is very good against spot removal. So having access to the full 4 after sideboard is very relevant. And the last card in the sideboard is Pithing Needle. It's not the best card against Mono Black, but it does, you know, it answers their first connections, sort of, since it still adds Devotion. but it turns off the most important part of it. It is a really bad answer to Pack Rat or their Mutavaults if they're ahead in either of those categories, and you just need to turn it off. But I like having it as insurance against... I turn off Erebos very often with this card, and if they bring in Whip, this is probably the best thing we can do to answer it. So I like having one. It's also a relevant card against the Revelation decks. It preemptively stops Elspeth. If we're behind in the Jace war, it'll like buy us a little bit of time. You can't rely on it too much against blue-white because they'll just Attention Spirit, but it creates pockets of time for us, and sometimes that's exactly what we need. And lastly, it definitely comes in against the green Planeswalker decks that play like Domri, Garruk, and Xenagos. It's very good there. So yeah, that's the deck. I've been having a lot of success with it lately. I won the Hawaii PTQ with it, made top 8 of California PTQ with the same main deck, slightly different sideboard, but the deck is tried and true. I think it will be a contender going forward once Born of the Gods comes out, although Bilebite may force us to re-evaluate the value of Pack Rat against Mono Black. But other than that, I think that the deck, having strong matchups against Mono Blue, Mono Black, and the Revelation decks, will allow it to continue to be a contender moving forward in the metagame. So I hope you enjoy the videos. Played in an 8-man and 2 daily events, and I'll post those up right after this. Alright, if you have any comments or suggestions, let me know in the comments and I will do my best to respond. Thanks for watching. Bye.